Oh, here we go again. The internet's buzzing, and Rachel Zegler is right at the center of it. Who would have thought Snow White, a fairy tale from 1937, would become the epicenter of one of the biggest pop culture storms in modern Hollywood? It's a clash between the woke and the anti-woke, between nostalgia and modern change. And right in the middle of that storm stands Rachel Zegler, unafraid, outspoken, and ready to defend her vision of Snow White.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
When Disney announced yet another live-action remake, the internet's reaction was predictable. Some fans were thrilled to see their childhood memories brought to life again, but others rolled their eyes, saying the studio had run out of ideas. This time, though, it wasn't The Lion King or The Little Mermaid, it was Snow White, the first princess, the beginning of everything. Back in 1937, Walt Disney risked everything he had to make Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Hollywood laughed at him. Critics called it Disney's folly, believing no one would sit through a full-length cartoon. But Walt refused to listen. He saw something others didn't, a world where animation could move people to tears. And he was right. Snow White wasn't just a movie, it was a revolution. It was color and music and heart woven together, the first animated feature ever made in Hollywood. It built the foundation for every Disney story that followed. Decades later, it still stands as a timeless piece of cinema history, the story of innocence, jealousy, love, and hope. The story of a young woman whose kindness triumphed over evil. So, when Disney revealed that it would bring Snow White back in live action, expectations were enormous. Who could possibly fill those shoes? That's when Rachel Zegler's name was announced. A rising star, known for her breakout performance in West Side Story, she was talented, outspoken, and full of energy. Fans were curious. Could she really capture that same magic, that purity of heart that made audiences fall in love with Snow White for nearly a century? But then, something changed. Rachel began to speak about the film, and her words set off a firestorm. In several interviews, she explained that the new Snow White would not follow the traditional story. She called the original 1937 version a bit strange by today's standards, saying that this new version wouldn't be about a girl who dreams of true love. Instead, it would focus on independence, courage, and finding your own strength. That statement was enough to divide the internet in two. To some, it sounded refreshing, a young woman reimagining a classic character for a new generation. But to others, it felt like Disney was turning its back on the very values that made its magic timeless. Critics began to question whether Disney even understood its own legacy anymore. Was the studio honoring its history or rewriting it? As Rachel's interviews continued, clips of her comments spread online. Entire YouTube channels, podcasts, and social media accounts jumped into the debate. Why can't Disney just let classics be classics? One side asked. Stories need to evolve, replied the other. Soon, the conversation wasn't about Snow White at all. It was about what Disney stood for, and whether it still believed in fairy tales.
She's not going to be safe with a prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can.
And that's when the real storm began. Rachel's every word became a headline. Her interviews, which at first seemed harmless, started to fuel a media firestorm that even Disney couldn't contain. Each comment, each facial expression, every bit of sarcasm she threw in interviews was dissected by millions online. Some said she was being arrogant. Others thought she was simply tired of being asked the same outdated questions. But one thing was clear, Rachel Zegler had become Hollywood's lightning rod. It wasn't just about Snow White anymore. It was about what Snow White represented, the collision of old fairy tales with a new world that no longer fit the mold. Rachel's remarks about not being saved by a prince hit a nerve. Fans who grew up loving the classic story felt betrayed, as if someone had walked into their childhood memories and started rewriting them. Others applauded her for daring to stand up to decades of traditional storytelling. Disney's creative choices only added fuel to the fire. The Seven Dwarfs, once beloved characters, were replaced with magical creatures. The studio said it was an effort to avoid stereotypes and bring inclusivity to the story. But that decision split the internet in half. Peter Dinklage, the Game of Thrones star, openly criticized the move, calling the idea of making another story about dwarfs backward and hypocritical. He said Disney was missing the point, trying to appear progressive while still using the same outdated ideas. Disney, on the other hand, released a statement saying they were consulting with representatives from the dwarfism community and wanted to create something respectful and reimagined. But by then, the damage was already done. News channels, podcasts, and YouTube creators all jumped in. Some accused Disney of trying to erase history. Others claimed this was simply evolution, storytelling adapting to a new generation. Behind the scenes, executives were reportedly growing nervous. Production costs had ballooned past $330 million, and every day of delay meant millions lost. Rumors started to circulate that test screenings didn't go as planned. Then came the unexpected twist. The Daily Wire entered the picture. In a bold move, they announced their own Snow White adaptation, Snow White and the Evil Queen, starring YouTuber Brett Cooper. The film was marketed as a faithful retelling of the original Grimm story. No modern twists, no political commentary, just the fairy tale people remembered. The internet exploded again. For the first time, two Snow Whites were competing, one representing Disney's progressive vision, the other standing as a banner for tradition. Even David Hand, the son of the original Snow White director, broke his silence. He said his father's work was being destroyed by the modern version, and that Walt Disney himself would never have approved of what was happening. Fans were divided like never before. Memes, edits, boycotts, and hashtags flooded every corner of social media. Some mocked Rachel's comments, others defended her bravery. And amid all that chaos, Rachel stayed silent for a while. But that silence, instead of calming the fire, only made people talk more.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Then, out of nowhere, Rachel returned, and she came back louder than ever. In a series of new interviews, she made it clear she wasn't going to apologize for her opinions. She said the 1937 Snow White was strange, a reflection of a different era, made by men who saw women through the lens of fairy tales and fantasy. This isn't a story about love, she explained. It's about courage, truth, and justice, about a young woman finding her voice and standing up for what's right. Her words resonated with some, especially younger fans who wanted to see a princess who didn't wait for rescue. But for millions of others, it felt like she was throwing away everything that made Snow White timeless. Her comment about the prince, played by Andrew Burnap, made things even worse. She hinted that his role would be different, that he wouldn't be saving anyone this time. Critics and YouTubers pounced on that quote. She hates men. She doesn't understand the story. She's mocking Disney's legacy. The headlines just kept coming. Soon, even Disney fans who had once supported her began to feel torn. Could Snow White still feel magical without its romantic heart? Or was this new version simply too modern for its own good? Rachel tried to lighten the mood. In one interview, she joked that she was Teflon now, that all the online hate just slid right off her. But behind those smiles, it was clear she was exhausted. Every public appearance was met with scrutiny. Every clip was remixed, mocked, or reinterpreted. Even her body language became part of the conversation. Meanwhile, the Daily Wire continued promoting their rival film, using Rachel's own words as fuel for their marketing campaign. Their tagline said it all: "Not every fairy tale needs fixing." It was a direct challenge, one that Disney couldn't ignore. Industry insiders say Disney executives began reevaluating the project's tone and marketing strategy. Some even whispered that reshoots were quietly happening to make the film less political. But Rachel stood her ground. She refused to be quiet. "This isn't about rewriting love," she said. "It's about showing a princess who doesn't need to be saved because she can save herself." Those words, though powerful, deepened the divide. Half the internet cheered her on. The other half turned against her completely. Now, two Snow Whites are ready to face off, two opposing visions of what a fairy tale means in 2025. One stands for progress, bold, modern, and unapologetic. The other stands for tradition, pure, nostalgic, and familiar. Both claim to honor the same story. Both believe they're preserving something important. But when the lights dim and the screen fades to white, only one question will remain: which Snow White will truly capture the heart of the audience? And maybe, just maybe, this time, the fairest of them all won't be chosen by a magic mirror, but by us.